contrarian, contrarian badass Reggie Middleton. He called the housing crash, he called the collapse of Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, and the crisis in the Eurozone banking system.
Reggie Middleton.
What is the Very DAO and what are its main goals?
So the Very DAO is a DAO. A DAO is a digital autonomous organization, which is a software-based organization as opposed to a traditional legal-based entity, which would be a company, Inc., LLC, etc., formed in the laws of a particular jurisdiction. This is formed in the mathematical rules, algorithms, etc., of a distributed ledger. So a whole bunch of fancy words and gobbledygook, software-based organization, okay? Their goal is to assist the Veritasium entities, my companies, in finding partners to work with our IP, which was patented in 2014, and which won patents in the US and Japan over the last year and a half. These patents are big things, in my opinion, of course, and they are what is considered foundational technology. So they're the foundation layer for technology for a large amount of industry participants. I believe it's the most important patent in the crypto industry, all told. Long answer, but hopefully I answered your question, though.
I'm interested in what you think the future of DAOs are, because you're seeing a bunch of DAOs pop up for everything. What's something to maybe anticipate possibly, like what are some useful use cases? What are some where you feel like you're seeing now that aren't so useful really in particular? So
the future of DAOs: stress, strife, litigation, lawsuits, and a lot of broken hearts, because DAOs are fascinating from an organizational behavior perspective, an organization perspective. Very efficient in doing certain things, but they have to live in the real world. I take that back, because the DAOs are the real world. Okay, they're just a new manifestation of the real world. I'm assuming if you go back to like 1992, 93, 94, a lot of people didn't think the internet was the real world either. You know, fast forward to now, you know, I'm in a room full of millennials, or Gen whatever, Z, Y, and you probably don't know life without the internet. But right about the time we were born, nobody used the internet. Most people didn't even know what the internet was. You know, Google didn't exist. It's still the real world. The way the DAOs are ensconced in blockchains and digital distributed ledger technologies, it's the real world, but it has not caught up to the traditional world where most of the power is. So I'm going to tell you a story about a DAO, Compound DAO from Compound Labs. It is a distributed autonomous organization that a lot of powerful investors use to invest money into Compound Labs. We are talking about very powerful. A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz, that's the guy who founded Netscape, which was the first browser, or the first popular browser. Coinbase Ventures, which is an investment arm for Coinbase, the largest crypto exchange in this country. We're talking $60 billion companies, right? Bain Capital, which is the investment arm for Bain Consulting, one of the most strategic companies in the world, consulting companies. They put in maybe $25, $30 million, I'm assuming, through the DAO to invest in Compound Labs. And Compound Labs is a DeFi company. I consider myself to be the founder of DeFi, and the US Patent Office and the Japan Patent Office agree with me from my perspective. So I think I have a very unique way of looking at this. When these companies invested money into the DAO, and that DAO, the money went from the DAO into Compound Labs, they opened themselves up to significant risk, because the DAO was supposed to be decentralized, so there's no centralized entity. But they did things that interface with the legal system. They made an investment. So Compound is infringing on my patent, in my opinion, not adjudicated fact, but they're also infringing on other patents, at least one other. There are people who have approached Compound Labs DAO and said, you're infringing. Now, here's the rub. In the legal system, you get served an order to show cause, a motion, a legal paper. You have to come to court and defend yourself. And then the other side that gets served the paper comes to defend itself. Okay? If you're decentralized, who do you serve?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, who do you serve the paper?
Yeah.
If you're suing someone? Or?
Yeah. A decentralized entity that doesn't have any central point.
Right. The DAO itself?
How do you serve the DAO?
Oh, I don't know.
So how can the DAO answer these papers?
I'm not
Quick answer, they can't, and the DAO's not sure either. So the person bringing the suit is most likely going to get a guaranteed win, a default judgment. Okay? Why?
Because no one can respond.
No one can respond, and I can be 100% wrong, which I don't feel I am, but I'm not a lawyer. Let's suppose they do respond. Okay? If they respond, what have they just proven? They're not decentralized. They're centralized. Now, if someone responds, they're centralized. Now you have someone that could be touched, they could be served, and they can be sued. That's a no-win situation. It's like this old legal adage, the criminal prosecution attorney says, so, when did you stop beating your wife? You know, you don't have a good answer to that. So, you know, either you did or you didn't. No matter what you say, it implies guilt, okay? The way this is working with the DAO, their best case scenario is still a bad scenario. They cannot reply, then they lose by default. They can reply, which proves that they're centralized, and everybody can be touched, okay? Now, the DAO, since it's not a company or an LLC or a corporation, there's a very, very strong chance that the running legal theory is that the DAO will be considered an unincorporated business entity or a partnership. And the members of the partnership have joint and several liability. So every member of the DAO is responsible for all the liabilities of the DAO. So they bring the DAO to court, they sue the DAO doesn't respond, you get a summary judgment that says you win. You now go to all these, you know, $40 and $50 billion venture capital and private equity funds, and you hit them with a bill individually, each and every one. I'm sure when they created the DAO and invested through it, they didn't see that coming. That's the weakness in the Compound DAO and all the other DAOs. So when you run capital through the DAO, you have to think of that. Now, some DAOs are incorporating as an LLC in Wyoming or Switzerland, but when you do that, then how is it distributed when you've centralized something in a legal entity? So there's a lot of thinking that needs to go into the DAO space, and it hasn't happened as of yet. In the meantime, they're getting hit potentially. I don't know, because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not the plaintiff, right? And I'm not going to mention who's doing it, by the way. But they're getting hit with these legal issues. On top of all that, the members of the DAO and the developers are making a very, very big mistake once it comes to due diligence. They're not doing IP due diligence. So they're basically not checking to see who patented what. You know, guys just start writing code, they're creating products, which is very good. But most of the time, they're not writing the code from scratch. They're going and taking code from somewhere else and copying it. It's called forking it. And they fork it and they customize it and they move forward. Someone else finds their code, they copy it or fork it, build on, do something else, and they're just building a layer. Okay, so you're building this big skyscraper, but the skyscraper is built on somebody else's property. And that's the person that owns the patent or the entity that owns the patent. And that's happening a lot. And then you have the people who built the skyscraper and they're getting upset. They're mad at the person that owns the property. They're not being upset that they built the property on someone else's land. They're not being upset at the person who put the first few bricks on somebody's land. They're getting upset at the landowner. And the landowner owns the land. He has the rights to property. If he had a public company, he'd actually be breaking the law by not acting in the best interest of the company holders by kicking the people off the land or charging them rent. He literally has to, or she literally has to do that because they have to act in the best interest of the shareholders. So again, a very long and convoluted way of saying, caveat emptor, buyer beware, and do your research. There's trillions of dollars going through crypto If not right now, very soon. Do you really think you could go through a multi-trillion-dollar industry and people won't try and buy and own land? With land being property, intellectual property, as opposed to physical or personal property. Okay, that's a long answer, but
That's a good one.
hopefully I answered your question.
The analogy was great. I like
Okay.
that. So,
Yeah.
let's see, because started talking. Kind of interested in what you think about the whole NFT space.
Okay. Almost everything I'm going to say is going to be controversial. Practically everything. Ugh. So my company, Veritasium, if that doesn't come out of focus, Veritasium is a word that I made up from the Latin root veritas, or veritas in American English, with ium. Veritas is truth in the Latin root. Ium is element, so the element of truth. And sometimes I can't help but tell the truth. You know, I could be a decent liar if I wanted to, but why lie? Okay? So in telling the truth, I told the truth about DAOs, and a lot of people are not going to like that. But, you know, I think it's the truth. It's a fact. NFTs are, what is an NFT?
Non-fungible token.
Which is?
It's, well, say, would be just, I guess, the antonym of fungible token, like versus Bitcoin, no?
Well, that's not really defining it. If I ask what a tall person is, and you say it's the opposite of a short person.
Okay.
Okay, let's start with where you're going. So an NFT is a non-fungible token, which is the opposite of, you said what?
A fungible one.
A fungible one, which is, like you give an example.
Bitcoin, Ethereum.
Okay, so how is Bitcoin fungible?
As
Let's start with a definition, help you out. What does fungible mean?
like,
All right, I don't want to know what it's like. Remember, we went through this and
I don't know an exact definition. I understand, like, kind of with the tangible asset value, or not tangible, but there's asset value. No.
okay, we're gonna do impartial.
Right.
The definition of fungible.
Here's the definition of fungible: of goods contracted for without an individual specimen being specified, able to replace or be replaced by another identical item, mutually interchangeable.
Okay, let's take the last two. Able to be replaced by another identical item or mutually interchangeable. So fungible basically means if I have one item, I could take another item that's identical and they could be mixed and matched without any problem. So if I have, let's assume that a white piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, is fungible because the other 50 pieces of paper, all white or 8.5 by 11, or all identical. So if I have 15 of these papers and you have 15, we can mix them up, take them back out. There's no difference between them. Okay? Is Bitcoin like that?
Yes. Well, out of all 21 million, I'd assume each Bitcoin is one Bitcoin versus another is still a Bitcoin, no?
Okay, so that would make it non-fungible or fungible?
Fungible.
Okay, so you're saying a non-fungible token is the opposite.
Yeah. Well, now that yeah.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to challenge you. Bitcoins or NFTs?
They are.
They're non-fungible.
Okay.
Okay, and if this was live, you know, I should have did this. We should have did this as a live, YouTube live, because we would have got a lot of comments in, and a lot of people like, no, it's not. But I'll go walk you through how Bitcoins are NFTs, and I'll prove that they're non-fungible. Do you remember we were discussing the couple who allegedly hacked Bitfinex and tried to launder it?
Mm-hmm.
They live not too far away. One, I think she lives in Brooklyn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she did the video up on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think over in Vada.
Yeah. So they allegedly hacked Bitfinex. They had roughly $6 billion or $4 billion of Bitcoin. They tried to launder. Okay. They did a lot of, allegedly, from what I understand, they did a lot to hide it. They took the Bitcoin, they split it up into hundreds of addresses. They sent it through a mixer. It went in a mixer. A mixer is something that mixes all the Bitcoins up with other stuff and then comes back out differently from the way it came in. So basically, you have a couple of dollars and they played the shell game. You know, you can't tell which shell it came out of. And then they encrypted passwords and private keys and did a lot to hide it. Apparently, these coins were unmixed, right? And they were pieced back together to the original amounts and traced to the owners of the Bitcoin, right? And traced into centralized exchanges where the guys KYC. They reconstructed all of that. They caught them and they locked them up. So if Bitcoins were truly fungible, how in the world could they tell which Bitcoins were stolen and which ones weren't? The fact that you can identify that a Bitcoin was stolen, even though it was mixed up with all the other Bitcoins and possibly other tokens, and they can reconstruct all that, go back to the original Bitcoins, unmix them, means that they're non-fungible by definition. The Bitcoins that were stolen were put up on an exchange to be sold. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I got my stories mixed up. Bitcoins that were sent to the Canadian trucker protests, which was outlawed by the Canadian authorities, were actually traced to centralized exchanges. Probably frozen, but I don't know. But the fact that you can trace it, again, is more proof, on top of the other story I told, these tokens are non-fungible, right? So the stolen Bitcoin cannot be easily interchanged with a non-stolen Bitcoin. They're marked. It's like putting a mark, X, the red scarlet letter, and it follows that Bitcoin around. If you can do that, it's non-fungible by definition, at least the definition we just Googled. Have I convinced you that Bitcoins are not NFTs now?
That they are or not?
What do you think?
Well, I mean, now I understand they're non-fungible. Because they easily,
If you can mark it and outlaw it, then they're not exchangeable.
I feel like we talked about this a long time ago. So now it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
You have $1 on you?
No.
Anybody have $1? Paper?
Real
See, yeah, the young generation
No,
doesn't
actually,
use.
I do have 20. I went to
You have 20?
yesterday.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Don't throw this one out the window.
Yeah. So, is this $20 fungible or non-fungible?
Well, I mean, isn't each 20, it's marked actually with an individual serial.
Okay, so is that fungible or non-fungible?
I assume non-fungible, but in a value perspective, would it be fungible though?
Okay, so if you went and robbed a bank,
Oh, no, I'm non-fungible on that.
okay, well, it can't be non-fungible on that. Either they're fungible or not. So
Non-fungible, okay.
that's like the halfway pregnant thing. That's not how the biology works, So, okay. So that's all I need to know. You caught on to that. Anything that could be tracked and isolated and frozen is non-fungible, because if the other assets or the other versions of this are not frozen, then there's a market difference. So anybody who wants to argue about Bitcoin, is this like mine or you want it back?
No, I can have that.
Yeah,
That one's traceable.
yeah, you come get it after the video. Okay. So I use non-fungible token. I'll take 20s, 100s, Bitcoin. I'm flexible. So starting with NFTs, first understand that NFTs are nothing special and they're nothing new. Bitcoin, because of the blockchain, in the essence of the blockchain itself, is an NFT. Okay, and so are these dollar bills that have a unique serial number on all of them. Some of them have not only just a unique serial number, a special sticker, some of them have a radiation mark, that can be tracked. So the concept of NFTs are much more pervasive than most people realize. They think it's something that's just new. NFTs are just things that are programmatically unique and original, like stolen Bitcoin. Okay, or marked Bitcoin, because you don't have to steal it. Let's suppose that you have a government entity that wants to trace all of your activities. You have not broken the law. You have not been accused of breaking the law, but they want to track you for whatever reason. Maybe you're too cute for the average, government employee, or maybe it's a very wealthy man with a lot of resources, or it's a bunch of bad guys, the mafioso, who knows, okay? But if they can track you and they can differentiate your allegedly fungible asset from everything else, then it's no longer fungible. So with that being said, that's my precursor on NFTs, okay? Almost anything that can be tracked is an NFT if it can be tracked individually compared to everything else. So what's your next question now?
while we're on the NFT train,
And we can keep going on NFTs, no problem.
last time we spoke, you had kind of explained how a great use case would be for identification. And now I guess after that last explanation, it makes sense. But can you talk about that, whether it be, say, passport or maybe like something like that, a piece of identification? How could that be used?
Okay. Well, identification, if it works, should be unique. As a matter of fact, that's the entire goal of identification, to let somebody know who you are and you individually and separately. Okay? That should be non-fungible by definition. But certain bad actors want it to be more fungible than non-fungible, because then they can become more anonymous or more pseudonymous. But with the pushing all that to the side, one of the best uses of NFTs are identification and contracts, in my opinion. Those are two killer uses of that particular app. So instead of you walk around with a paper passport or a driver's license or state ID, you can have a non-fungible token whose metadata, right, contains 3 of your fingerprints, maybe a genetic marker unique to just you, or a DNA marker unique to just you, a scan of your retina, or all 3. Okay, and depending on how 1984 George Orwell you want to get, you can have more information that you might not want to share, such as your social media rating. How popular are you? How many followers do you have on what platform? Your credit score, your health, how rambunctious you are pushing against state mandates. You know, if you're in one of the communist countries that have much more control, at least, well, I don't want to get too political, but you know, much more control, they can track you, and you can actually lose money by being too rambunctious for social media. You talk back against the state, you lose 300 credits per day, with the credit being the value of $1. So you lose $300 a day for every state critical post you put up. So this is all basically the use of an NFT. Not all of it good from your perspective, okay? Not all of it good from the government perspective. And I'm not gonna go with the anti-pro-government, but I'm giving you an example of how this probably will be used. Central bank digital currency, CBDCs, are something that most people would think of as a fungible token, basically digital money. But with the ability to track through blockchains and distributed ledgers, it could get very, very non-fungible very quickly, with the examples I just gave you. So if you had a choice of using this, which is tracked primarily just with a serial number, and since many people don't pay attention to that serial number, it becomes slightly more fungible. Or $20 in a central bank digital currency, which also tracks, keeps a record of all of your transactions, whether it's known or not known, okay, admitted or not admitted, your health, your location. So imagine every time you do a spin on a blockchain, metadata includes your GPS location. It includes your heart rate, right? You have an iPhone or Android. You have an Apple Watch. Okay, so you have an Apple Watch or an iPhone, GPS location, heart rate, you know, pulse, the expenditure through the CBDC, et cetera. So you go into a store, you decide to rob it. You run out, you get caught, you know you're not on camera. I wasn't there, I didn't do it. Really? So they get your GPS location through the iPhone, they get your heart rate, they get how much money you spent or did not spend, the time of the transaction. They could piece all this together. Now, I'm making a lot of assumptions. I'm running off the top of my head, but do you see the many different avenues of privacy piercing that can come from just using a purely digital platform? You know, CBDCs are potentially a ridiculously deep threat to privacy, because not only are they tracking transactions, but they could cross-reference it with all types of data. They know where you were when you made your transaction, how much you made the transaction for, where the capital came from, where it went, what your heart rate was when you made the transaction. So if you defrauded somebody and the heart rate went up at the same time you made the transaction, and you say, but I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, why'd your heart rate spike? Sounds like a science fiction movie, right? Yeah. Okay. So, anything else?
How could I, as someone in media, photography, video, apply NFTs to my business?
Okay. I would NFT every bit of digital property that you send out or that you work on. And the NFT, as a non-fungible token, you make it unique, okay? And you will include rights. So let's suppose you did this video with me. I paid you whatever. Suppose I didn't pay you anything for it, right? You didn't give it to me for free. You just didn't charge me up front for it. But I posted to YouTube. I get very popular. I get 6 million views. I decide to put a subscription, put it behind a subscription wall, and charge and put some ads in it. It's throwing off maybe $25,000 a month. Very popular, okay? This video as an NFT would entitle you to a cut of 10% of that. So you're getting $2,500 a month from this video and from every other video that you make for me. Okay, if this video is resold, right, and it's resold through a chain, you get a cut of that resell as well. Okay, and if you do that for every video that you put out, now you're creating annuity streams. Okay, but this has to be regulated through the blockchain, but if it doesn't have access to the blockchain, it won't play. Okay, that's a way of creating a new business model. You could do that with any digital item or asset that can either live on a chain or can get access to a chain to be decrypted or unlocked. So imagine you did this for 15, 20, 30 years, you're in your early 20s. At 45, you did this for, let's say, 23 years, okay? You have 23 years of continual residual annuity payments over maybe 600 movies or 600 videos and pictures, etc. Do you see how that can add up, right? And it's an actual asset now. You decide to get old, you say, I want to do some estate planning, I want to give this to my children. You have children. You set it in your will, okay? And you can program an NFT to automatically pass title or ownership over to a new address sometime in either the earliest point, whether you die or you hit 65. For estate tax planning, whatever, whatever the rules the laws have to be then. So by creating a new business model, you can use NFTs, basically create a whole new world. The Metaverse, which you probably hear a lot about, is a big marketing scam. You know what the Metaverse is?
VR.
It's the internet.
Oh, it's funny. I've been talking about this. Where's Jonathan? Is he here? Oh no, I was talking to him. I was like, it's a bunch of marketing for because I had been interested in VR stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 2, 3, or a year, about half a year before COVID started.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, if things were moving differently, where you were involved in a digital space, it'd be cool. But now it's like they're selling it to you as, oh, we're bringing NFTs into this new world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like,
I mean, it's new because the technology is improving, but it's the internet, and the internet is intermesh network of protocols that work together, and then you have a visual interface over it called the World Wide Web. That was new back in the early 90s, okay? And then you have Web 1 and Web 2, where you have programmability of pages like JavaScript, et cetera, and Web 3, where you have the ability to have programmable financial transactions instead of regular traditional financial transactions. That's the blockchain, DLT, et cetera. Now you add more advanced visuals to it. Virtual reality, the ability to plug directly into, you never know, directly into your brain. But at the end of the day, it's still all just the internet. So instead of calling it Web 3 or Web 4, they come up with a name, Metaverse, and it's a big marketing push. But it's the internet, it's the World Wide Web. Sorry if I busted your bubble, but
I presume most of them
yeah.
are most of these platforms or whatever, they're going to be run on the internet anyway.
Right.
It's like,
They're going to be run on the internet. A lot of transactions may go through a chain, a blockchain, or may not, probably will, or some type of distributed ledger, which may be faster or better. But this is all the progression of the internet. Every time you had a significant bump in capability or performance, you rename the internet, which is a good idea, you know. Reggie's World 3.0, that's advanced metaverse. Remember that.
So, not bullish on the metaverse.
It's not that I'm not bullish on the metaverse. It's
You think it's
you know, they come up with a name for the progression of the internet. Okay.
and you think that's, I assume, to attract.
Yeah, it's marketing. Yeah, the marketing guys, and it works. Don't get me wrong. You know, day before yesterday, we were walking in the village, and the woman I was walking with, she pointed out to my daughter. She said, "That guy that just walked by, you know who that is?" I'm like, "I have no idea." She said, "That's the owner of Supreme." He said he's worth about $1 billion now. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. But I thought about it. You know, it's easier to believe that he's worth $1 billion than it is to believe that he was selling bricks for a couple of $100s each. And these were regular bricks. They just said Supreme on them. Not in a fancy way. It literally just said Supreme. Someone like drew Supreme on it. Marketing to the nth degree. Not taking anything away from the guy, but he mastered marketing. And you were able to sell commodity items like a regular t-shirt with Supreme on it, not even a fancy font, and now it's several $100s. Sneakers, whatever, he just put Supreme on it, skateboard stickers.
Yeah.
Same goes for everything. You know, I'm a big fan of Apple as a company, but as a product, I'm like, commodity products, premium prices, okay? And now they have premium products, but the premium products are at super premium prices. Why? Marketing. You know, I go to use the NFC payment. Apple Pay? No.
NFC Pay.
NFC Pay, you know.
But there's Google Pay, exactly.
Yeah, it's
No, I
Google
know.
Pay.
Everywhere.
Yeah, and everybody has their pay, but nobody says Google Pay or Android Pay or Huawei Pay. What do they say? Apple Pay. Why? Because Apple's better at marketing.
Yeah,
At least in the States they are.
I remember when we were at that restaurant with Messiah last time we were here.
Yeah.
And you were like, Google Pay? And it was like, no. Apple Pay. I think you said yes or whatever
Yeah.
it was. Yes.
So when you're dealing with retail and the average consumer, marketing means a lot. Branding means a lot, an awful lot. You know, technically, there is no difference because the branding department usually knows nothing about the tech, okay? And the tech usually don't understand branding, but when you get them together, like Apple has done, phenomenal success.